All right, everybody, welcome to the Chason Laing podcast. Amazing guests, great conversations. Don't really know where we're going to go, but it's going to be a great time getting there. And I'm not even going to worry about all the subscribe stuff today. You know what to do. Please share us with your friends. That's amazing. Today we have an amazing guest. MARTY Jean Louis is here with us today. He is, for those of you who don't know, he's the president and CEO of 24 Flicks. He is the founder and executive director at ICFF, which is the International Christian Film Festival. He's the president and founder of My Christian Films, which is a charitable organization. And he's got you're a producer also on a film, Don't Say My Name, correctly?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Yes.
So, I mean, and that's like only even some of it. Like, there's so much more that we could talk about. But first, MARTY, thank you for being on my little show here. I'm super pumped about having you on. I have so many questions for you. Just super excited. So thanks for being here.
Dude, thank you. I mean, what an introduction. I feel so special.
You are special, man. You're super special. Oh man, but first, just from reading your stuff that I find online and keeping up with you, my first most important question is just going to be, when do you sleep?
Lately, not a whole lot.
Yeah,
not a whole lot.
You got ICFF is right around the corner in May. Just we're coming up. It's like 6 weeks away or something like that, and it's an epic one. It's the 10-year anniversary, correct?
Yeah.
So
Very
I mean,
excited.
You've got so much stuff going on, and I'm definitely trying to come. My daughter has a nomination for something there, and so like I haven't. Yeah, nice. So I'm thinking I got to do my dad duty, right? You gotta go.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So we're looking into that, but I just want to just start real quick because you have your hands in so many of the Christian film. The whole world. You're just a little bit in everything and all aspects of it. And so I just wanted to start with, how did you end up in this whole space? Like, when did you get into this whole film world thing? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I was born liking like photography and film. For some reason, ever since I was small, I just enjoyed that stuff. I never really, as a child, I always saw my dad with a camera or someone with a camera. I always wanted to grab it and use it, but I couldn't. But there were times that I did without them knowing.
Well, that's the best way to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I was just always fascinated by just cameras, period.
Was it just the pictures, or was the stories happening in your head, or what? When I was about 9 years old, my dad is a pastor. He's retired now, and he started teaching us, his kids, to use the camera. Man, I was just like hooked. Ever since I knew how to use this, camera, my brothers and I, we were making movies when they would leave the house, like to go to the supermarket or just to leave. We would make karate movies, which was awesome. And we just never really stopped. So what happened? I mean, obviously, were you just making movies through high school? Like, at what point, like, what happened between the young MARTY learning a camera to the MARTY of today with your hands and all this stuff? I mean, there had to be some learning stuff and some experiences, some films. Like, what happened? Yeah.
So I loved it so much that I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to become a director in Hollywood. That was my goal, and I was really determined to do that. And I went to school for broadcasting and film.
Which school?
I took my first film class. I was using the 8mm camera. This was like awesome. I'm like, this is it. This is what I was born to do. This is what I wanted to do. And after the first semester, I was talking to some teachers. One of the teachers says, it's going to be almost impossible to make it in Hollywood, because that was my goal, because I'm Black. And I don't know that he said that as a racist thing, but it was said maybe to protect me or to warn me. I don't know. But the way I took it is, man, like, you're right. Because at the time, it was just Spike Lee, right? That was like a known Black director. There were nobody else that I knew of. So I look at that and I'm like, I am probably not going to make it if there's only one. So believe it or not, the very next year, I changed my career path to go into computer science. So I changed my major to computer science. And that's not what I wanted to do, but I enjoyed, using computers and, being creative and learning codes and such, but it wasn't really my passion. So I didn't do too well with that. So I left college. I joined the Marine Corps, come back, went to school. I stuck with the computer thing when I came back, and I learned networking. So how to network computers and all that. And I'm skipping a lot of things.
No, it's great.
Just to keep the story short. And I found a job at the UN, United Nations in New York. And I was doing the computer thing and it was great. Everything is going well. And then I started meeting folks, these guys that runs the cameras at the UN, that does the photographies for all of those, heads of states that attend. I'm talking to these guys and I'm hanging out with these guys and I'm learning, and there's a spark again, right? Like, remember, your first love, and remember your first love. And then what's awesome is that God happened to put me in the department where my department, where I worked at, is in charge of events at the UN. So any events that happens at the UN, my department was the department that was in charge of it, meaning that anytime any heads of state, my department would be in charge, and I would be hanging out with these guys and learning and stuff like that. Any film that would come to the UN, guess what? Is my department, the events department, that was in charge of making sure all of it is good. And guess what? I would be like, can I hang out, with these guys? And of course, it's always yes. And that's how I started learning. Not so much by going to school, but by watching and asking questions and see how they do things in Hollywood. So I watch a lot of that and I learn a lot from that.
So if we rewind real quick, so, you're there in school and they tell you, hey, we don't really think one way or the other there's a future for you here because you're Black. And then you've obviously got this heart that says you want to do this. So at the time, I mean, do you remember feeling like, well, God, what happened with this? Did you make some big mistake, or kind of how did you take that?
What's interesting is I was so set to going into Hollywood, and I have to go back. A lot of times I have to go back and think about, man, what happened? And I think God allowed things to happen because of the path that I was heading. And he knew that I was a very determined person. Once I set my mind to something, I'm going like full on. And that was probably the only way. And that's how I look at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, probably the only way to redirect me from perhaps making a mistake. Because had I gone to Hollywood, I think I would not be doing any Christian
probably not
movies, and I was not thinking of doing Christian movies. I'm not saying I was thinking of doing rated R movies, but I was thinking of just being, the next biggest Hollywood director who happens to be Black.
Right. What about, I mean, that kind of leads to one of my questions is, so, you know, you're there at the UN, you're learning all this camera, the operations, how to put things together, tell stories and so on. I'm curious, what ultimately kind of pushed you toward the Christian film space as opposed to just the you know, world film space? You know, like where was the tipping point there where you kind of landed on that side?
So remember I said my dad was a pastor, so I'm a PK, preacher's kid, for those of you who may not know. You know, I have to credit my wife, because I was always, even though I knew God, and I was not necessarily heading in the right directions. And I have to credit my wife, who's always been there for me to kind of steer me, like, dude. You know?
She's got the little elbow going, like, come on.
Yeah. And that happened a lot. You know, and I think she helped me realize where I needed to go. And that's, you know, with a lot of conversation with her, and she redirected me from like Hollywood without her realizing what she was doing. She's not trying to do that, but she's just trying to get me back on track with God, and making sure that I'm going in the right direction as a husband and as a father.
Yeah.
And I have to credit her quite a bit to help guide me back. And I started, believe it or not, ICFF, the idea came from New York. I don't talk about that a whole lot, but it came from New York many years ago. But I just didn't know what God was up to, right? So there was this idea of this thing, but it wasn't very clear at all whatsoever. But it was something that was being built in New York. Now that it makes sense what God was trying to do the whole time.
Well, that's perfect segue into where I was going, because I'd like to talk about ICFF, because I mean, first of all, it's at this point one of the largest, if not the largest, Christian film festival in the world. Correct? I mean, it might be the largest one that I'm aware of.
I'm aware of too.
Yeah, so
I'm not aware of any others.
So it's the largest in the world in this film space. It's only 10 years old, which is saying something. And so I just am curious, like, what was this stuff, like, what got you going on that? How did that begin? What's the story, the genesis of where this festival came from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we moved to Florida, there was an event, if you will, that they did every year. It was almost like a festival where they would show the latest Christian films. And I used to take my kids to watch like VeggieTales and some of the kids' movies, and it was free. And it was an awesome event that we went every single year. And one year, and I knew it was in the fall, one year I'm like, yeah, this is coming. You know, I wonder what new movies that, you know, I'm going to take the kids to watch. And, you know, September comes and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, what's happening? Where's that thing? I'm like, okay, maybe they pushed it to a different date. And, you know, October came, like, this is still not happening. So I called a friend of mine who typically knows everything that's happening in the Christian space in Orlando. We all have that person. And I said, Mark, you know, what's happening? And he's like, yeah, they canceled indefinitely. And at that very moment, I can hear God saying, you should do it. Like, you should do it. And at the same moment, I said, absolutely no. I will not do any such thing. Absolutely no. I will not do such thing. because the crazy thing is I hate events, like putting together events. I don't mind attending them. I just don't want to put them together. And God is like, I'll show you. So literally for 2 years, I'm like, no, I will not do this. I will not do this. I will not do this. I will not do it. I will not do it. Because I knew what it would take to do it. One, and I knew like when God calls you to do something, it's never really small. Like
Yeah.
He has a big plan. And I did not want to be a part of that. And at the time, I had a studio where we were filming TV shows. And those TV shows were going out to Christian television network. And I was busy, right? Like producing shows. I'm like, I've got enough on my plate. I don't need more. And I told Chris, who was my partner, and I'm like, Chris, I have this idea, but I'm rambling, festivals. Like, yeah. Because he was editing at the time. I remember it clearly. He was editing the show, one of the shows. And he's like, okay, yeah. He knows me because I'm a guy with ideas. I have ideas all the time. And so I was afraid to even tell my wife because I knew what she was going to say. She would make sense out of things. So I did not tell her. It's like, she's going to make me do it. If she's going to say something that makes sense. And I'm going to have to be like, that makes a lot of sense. I have to do this now. So I fought God for 2 years. And then like, towards the tail end of that 2 years, and the feeling is just stronger and stronger and stronger. And I'm like, okay, God, okay, let's make a deal. If you can show me without a doubt something, somehow, that I'm supposed to do this, I'll do it.
So like kind of like a Gideon Fleece thing.
Yeah, but in my heart, I'm ready to deny everything. I'm like, it's in my head, it's not God, So the same guy from 2 years ago, Mark, had invited me to an event that he was hosting. And after the event was over, and he came to me, and he said, Marty, do you remember that, event that he used to do with film? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you should do it. I'm like, how do I respond to that? Like, I didn't know how to respond to that. That was one thing I wasn't prepared for at all. So I accepted reluctantly. I still didn't want to do it. So I still accepted, but I didn't want to do it. So I said, God, okay, I'll do it. Got in the computer because I knew how to do that stuff. Here's a website. Boom. I did it, God. I got a website on. I did the film festival thing. And then back to doing the regular stuff. So the first year, I'm like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do much promotion or anything. I just put a website together. And, I didn't expect much of any submissions at all. Yeah. I'm like, if I get 10 submissions for the year, fine. If I don't get any, that's fine too. Then that will be my sign that I'm not supposed to be doing this. First year, we got 72 submissions, which was insane because I didn't do anything.
Right. It's just existing in space and people found it.
I'm like, how are people finding this anyways? So it goes to tell you, like, when God calls you to do something, he has a plan already in place. It's not going to be easy, for sure. There's going to be a lot of challenges, but he's got the challenges covered. And every challenge that I've faced with this festival, and we have faced many, he's had his hands on them to remove the challenges as we face them.
Yeah. Well, and to fast forward to today, just to give the audience a reference point, if they haven't been. So now we're 10 years forward, and just how many submissions did you get this year?
I think we got like 700 or something around there.
So times 10 what you originally got.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, for me, I talk about this festival like the Christian Oscars or something, minus the slapping.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I could add that for you if you ask me nicely. But I mean, it really is like, it is a serious event. It lasts what, 3.5, 4 days, 4 days?
4 days.
It lasts 4 days. There are seminars and speakers. There's casting directors. There's obviously screenings of all the films, and there's a giant red carpet. Like, I've been on red carpets before. I was surprised at how impressive your red carpet was, with the reporters and the people going through there. And I've done it several times, and there is nothing that is not top notch about that festival or your festival. There's like absolutely nothing. It's the details are astounding, considering you're a guy who hates putting events together, but it is an astounding experience. And the award show is phenomenal, and it's just very, very professionally done. And so it's just impressive. Like you said, God gave you this small thing and said, do it. And now you move forward this many years, and it is, you have done well. You've blessed countless numbers of people through this festival.
One thing I will mention is that when we first started this festival, I never went to any film festivals. I felt like I shouldn't go, because if I go to a film festival, then I'll do what they do. Right? Like, okay, so this is how film festivals are supposed to be.
Right.
Let's do it that way. I didn't go to any film festival. In fact, I only went to the film festival 3 years ago for the first time.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, because at least then you're just going after what you want. Yeah.
It's risky, because then you're not following the formula that has been set, right? Like the successful formula that has been set. So I'm going like blindly trying to figure this out. But God has put it so that I've seen behind the scene of the Oscars, right? Like I had press credentials to the Oscars and to high profile events. So I kind of like, let me go from that angle instead, because if you're gonna, this is the top of the top, right? Like, let me use those things as examples of how perhaps we should do that.
Well, I think you've done a great job coming from that perspective. And as somebody who did the opposite, I went to bunches. I never ran a film festival, but I've been to bunches and bunches of film festivals. The first Christian film festival that I ever went to that I was nominated for was in California, and I had a TV show that I had entered into it. And so because it was nominated, I didn't know any better. So I just flew out to California to go to this festival. They invited me to the awards thing and everything. And I'm like, well, it's actually right there in Santa Monica. It's got to be good. And I got there, and my wife will tell you, I had this little hotel there in Santa Monica, and I went up for my screening, and there were these two dudes at this booth, and they looked completely shocked that I was there. And I'm like, I have a film that's supposed to be playing in like 30 minutes from now on the website. And they're like, we're not used to people coming. And I was like, but I was invited to be, well, we invite people, but most of the time we don't have people. I'm like, then what's the award show? And they're like, oh, it's just basically down at the bar. And they're like, hey, congratulations, you win. And I was like, okay. And so nobody was there to see this thing. It was just in this theater there in Santa Monica. And I remember calling my wife, and they had the banner. You could take your picture in front of the banner. And so I went and I had one of the guys take my picture, and I just said it to my wife. I'm like, so this is about as low as you're going to get here. And ironically, that was the same year that was the first year I came to ICFF. And so it was like I flew to ICFF very, I was not expecting anything.
Low expectations.
I was expecting nothing. I was like, people invited me. I knew some people in Florida, and I was like, all right, we're We'll go check this thing out. I hope it's good. It looks like it's good. It's gotten reviews, but until I actually saw it, I just did not believe it. But yeah, it's an incredible thing. So, but anyway, so for ICFF, just for the audience, it's coming here in 6 weeks. You should really attend. Would you like to give a plug real quick before we move on about why to attend?
Yeah, I mean, we are stepping it up a notch. Let me just say that. Well, we're stepping it up a little bit. There is something that we're doing this year that's, well, few things that we're doing this year that's so cool. It is really cool that I think we've stepped it up. But anyways, this is the 4-day event where you could watch over 200 films, meet some of the greatest people, and you could attest to that. Some of the greatest people are there, happy to be there, and so friendly, such a great environment. And you don't have to be in the film industry to attend this festival. We have 3 concerts this year. We have Petra. I don't know, maybe some of you know the band Petra from the 80s and 90s. They're going to do a special concert for us, which is really, really awesome. We have a hip hop concert on Friday. And then we have a praise and worship concert. So we have 3 concerts this year. We have lots of films, lots of amazing speakers. Oh my goodness. Lots of great speakers, lots of great classes. And of course, we're going to have the red carpet, the award ceremony. Actually, this year we have 2 award ceremonies. So we break it down so that the main award ceremony, the night one, is not 4 hours long.
Right.
Want to do that. So
I think it's a smart idea.
Yeah, one earlier and one later. And then we have an after party after that, which is really going to be, okay, let's all relax now. Everything is over. Let's just have a little fun and have a good time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can attest. It's probably the best networking Christian film festival I think that there is. There's a few other really good ones, but there's just so many great people there. So if you can't go, guys, in Florida, it's coming up. It starts May 5th.
May 4th.
May 4th, and then it goes all the way through the 7th, Saturday the 7th.
Yep.
So if you can't go to that. So let's move on, Marty, because now we got more stuff I want to get to. Tell me real quick. So you are basically the president CEO of 24 Flicks, which is basically an online streaming platform. And I want you to tell me, how did that come about? How did you start that, and kind of where is that thing going? Because I think it's only a few years old, correct? Like I didn't know about it until
it's still very new.
Yeah.
So it started again as a way, because I didn't, in 2013, I was looking for like a safe environment for my kids to sort of go to, because at the time we had Netflix, but PureFlix was there, but it was coming up very nice. But I wanted to have like sort of like in between the two, right? Something that is not necessarily labeled Christian, but has Christian content, also has non-Christian content that is safe. And the idea behind that is really evangelistic, because if I can present you with something that you want that isn't a Christian thing, you're like, let me check it out. But if I said it's Christian, some people are going to be like, it's not for me.
Yeah.
So the people that I'm after are the people that are going to watch the non-Christian thing. And as they go and watch the thing that isn't non-Christian, they're going to browse around. What else is there? And then they're going to stumble into a Christian thing. Now, it's between them and the Holy Spirit what happens next. And that's, for me, is the goal of that, is not to necessarily label it so that people are like, let me at least check it out. Who knows what happens when they check it out.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your, as far as like support from the Christian community. I've always kind of learned over time of especially when dealing with Christian organizations and streaming platforms and so on, that it usually is, you need to make it hard hitting Christian, or the audience just won't show up for you. Especially if you're like, well, no, we're going to make this thing for non-Christians over here for the purpose of kind of doing what you said, kind of putting them in that same realm. But there seems to me to be far less support in that area. So how has it been for a platform for you getting content and kind of using this mission? Are you getting a lot of support for that, or are you finding it hard as well?
Yeah. So everything in life is hard. You just have to work at it. It's
Yes,
true.
it is true.
Everything in life is hard. It's not easy. There's nothing to be successful at it is going to be easy, and it happens overnight. And it takes typically years. And for me personally, I don't go after numbers per se. I know exactly what you're saying. If you don't make it hardcore Christians, then the Christian's like, I don't know about it. Then the other's like, well, I don't know either. I'm only going after the few that is willing to check it out. Mm-hmm. That is the goal of 24 Flicks. It's not necessarily, at the end of the day, God will do what he needs to do. It's not necessarily to make it the biggest platform that it could be, but more so, how many lives can I change, as opposed to, oh, this is the biggest thing. You know, I'm out there. I want to change lives. If it's one that I change, that's wonderful. If it's two, that's wonderful too. If it's millions, that's great. But I'm out there. I think about that one person. How can I get them over on God's side?
Yeah.
In other words, what can I do to get them there without knocking them over the head with the Bible?
Yeah, no, I love it. Like, I could not be more behind that philosophy and that vision. I mean, it's very similar to some of the things that I've believed in, I've wanted to do for a long time, because I think, kind of like you said, if it's very Christian, a lot of times the people that you want to watch are going to be like, nope, I'm out of here. Yep. And they go to something else. And so I was like, well, let's make something that's maybe not so like this and do that. But it was, every time I would try to go that route, the Christian community would look at me like I made a mistake. And they're like, hey, dude, you forgot, he's supposed to pray at this point of the movie. He didn't do that. You've completely screwed up. You need to go back and fix it. And, and it was like, but I'm trying to get this person. And I just had such a difficult time as a creative person, putting stories together, making that happen. And I think that, as far as what you're saying, I totally agree. I think the need is super great for what you're saying. I'm just curious on the support and on the platform. I'm hoping that you're getting decent support for it.
I think everyone has their mission, right? No matter which way you go, people are going to have something to say, right? For example, there are Christians that needs to be in Hollywood. If there are no Christians in Hollywood, then Hollywood is going to be completely dark. But not every Christian needs to be in Hollywood, because that's not your purpose and that's not your mission. We all have our mission. If God calls us to do a specific thing, yes, some Christians are not going to be happy with it. Tough.
Yeah.
God called me to do this. I have a responsibility, not to you, but to God. So I'm going to do that, knowing that I'm going to get some slack, and I have gotten a lot of it. That's okay. I'm going to push forward, because at the end of the day, I have one person to report to.
Right. I like that. And let's speaking of things that God calls you to do and to focus on it, let's kind of move over to, you did a film recently that's very strategic, very timely, called Don't Say My Name. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the film, and then I'd like to know kind of how did you've been working on it for several years. How did it come about? Why did you choose this particular film?
Yeah, great question. And it's one of those things I get slack for, by the way.
Well, I think you tell me about it first before I jump in there. I want the audience to hear from you.
So I would want to say about 7 years ago, I started learning about human trafficking. I didn't know anything about human trafficking. And And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. My eyes was wide open. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this existed. And I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to do? I'd love to do something. I just don't know what to do. Like, what do? I'm just finding out about this thing, but I want to do something.
Yeah.
You got to be careful what you ask for.
You haven't learned that yet? Did you not hear the first part of this podcast?
I know, right? Like, seriously. Still learning. I'm still growing. And then fast forward about 2 years after that, I met someone who came to ICFF. He had a movie there. And then after the festival was over, and he said, my wife and I would like to meet with you. And we met, and he said, we have this movie about human trafficking. I'm like, oh, human trafficking? I'd love to hear more. And they started telling me about it. I said, okay, where's the script? So I read their script, and I'm like, I think, first of all, let's go backward a little bit. Let's talk to some survivors of human trafficking. Let's talk to organizations that deals with human trafficking. To make the story, what you have is good, but let's make it a real story. Let's make it very authentic. And so we started working on that. And then someone introduced me to Homeland Security. So we flew to New York to meet with Homeland Security. And we met with the guys that does a lot of the rescuing. And we heard a lot of their stories. And I'm like, okay, you guys okay with us using some of this, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. We didn't use specific names or whatever, but we took a lot of it in, because what we wanted to do is make it as authentic as possible, and based on the true events that actually took place. So we pulled from all the stories that we heard to make Don't Say My Name.
So then I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen what you've been posting online. Yeah. So you worked to make this film. It took you at least 2 years, correct?
Yes, we did 2 years of research, because I didn't want to just jump into it, not really fully understanding what I was getting into. Boy, there is a lot about sex trafficking. I'm like, man, I can't unlearn some of the stuff that I've learned.
Yeah, it's a horrifying world for sure.
It is nuts. It is nuts. So we did 2 years of research, and then we did pre-production. We did some tests, and then and I said, look, we're going to go in production November 2019. Let's go. And we had a lot of attacks. We raised some money initially for pre-production. That went out so fast. You know about that.
Wait a minute. You had money for your production? What?
Like $3. So we use that very quickly, and then we're like, okay, we got to raise money for the production. So we were raising very little, and this is the summer of the year that we're supposed to be filming. And so September comes, October comes, and we're shooting in November. We don't have the money. Everybody, as you can imagine, is panicking. Everyone around me is panicking. Even Federico and Patricia, who brought the film, he says, Marty, we should postpone it for next year. And I said, no. If we postpone it, we're not going to do it. And we have to trust that God will provide. So a month before we go into production, we don't have enough money. 2 weeks before, we don't have enough money. A week before, we don't have enough money. 2 days before, we don't have enough money. Not nearly enough. Not nearly. It was the night, literally, a family came And I remember it was close to 11 p.m. I'm speaking with them on the phone. This is the day before we go in, and everybody's already here.
Yeah.
We're going to shoot, and I don't have money to pay the production company. The night before, a family came in and gave us what we needed to push forward. And I've seen God do that so many times in my life. At the last hour, he comes through. And I think it's important. God always puts us, not always, but at least for my experience, he always puts me to the test to see, are you going to trust me?
Yeah.
I called you to do it. Are you going to trust me? Let's see how much you're going to trust me. Had we pulled, I promise you we would not have a movie.
Yeah,
because
I can believe that.
God would be like, I'm out. You didn't trust me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
There's so many things. If once you stop, then anything else that's hard that comes along, you'd be back in that. Well, we stopped before we could stop again, and then it would just
Exactly.
Yeah, that's incredible. So now the film is completed, correct?
Yes.
So what is the future? When are we going to see this thing? Where's it going? What's the plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what we've been doing, and I tell people, this is not a film necessarily for entertainment purposes, right? It's a film with a purpose. We've been touring with this film in different cities, taking it in different theaters. And what we do is we have Homeland Security that's attached to us. And after the movie, we have a serious conversation about human trafficking. And then Homeland Security, and sometimes we have some organizations, they can answer a lot of the stuff that I cannot. And we have Homeland Security in their city. So they can specifically tell them, this is what's happening right here in this city. And people are blown away. They're shocked. And they don't want to leave the theater because they have so many questions, and now they want to do something. And that's the purpose of the movie. We want people to start taking action, whether it's very small or big, or even just volunteer to an organization. We want people to take action, or even post about it and talk about it. We want people to take action to put an end on this horrific crime.
So is there like a tour date, or how are you making your way around the country with this?
So we had to stop the tour to shift focus to the film festival.
Yeah, it's kind of busy.
Yeah, but we are going to release it online. We didn't want to just release it just to release it. Yeah, that's great. But we wanted to at least have that conversation with a lot of different folks. We're still going to be making some tours. I don't know where else that we're going to be going yet. I know we have to make a tour in New York, or we're going to be going to the Dominican Republic, and some other cities for sure. But it's going to be available everywhere for people to be able to watch that movie.
Well, I'm super excited. I followed it from, I remember hearing about it years ago when it was first trickling in the vapor there of going to be. And so I'm looking forward to actually finally seeing this thing. I know a lot of people who were attached to it. And so just super excited to see what you guys did with it. And I think that I'm near the Cowboys Stadium. So anytime that there's games or anything like that, it is a major hub of that here. And I'm friends with quite a few police officers around here, and I hear about it constantly. And it's just such a horrible, prevalent issue going on right now. So super excited about that. And I do have a couple quick questions for you before we run out of time. I figure you're well-versed in these areas, so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. But when it comes to Christian film, you now have streaming, you've got a film festival, you're also in the creative industry with Don't Say My Name and other content. I'm curious, the question I get asked a lot is, is there any money to be made in Christian film? And I'm curious to know, what's your answer? Having been in it for this long, in the trenches, what would you say?
The answer is yes and no.
That's a good answer, man.
The answer is yes and no, and I'll answer it this way. If you have to borrow a lot of money to create your film, it's a lot riskier to make the money back, right? Depending on how much you borrow. From my experience, if you keep your movie under 150,000, again, we're talking about indie, independent, Christian films. We're not talking about $1 million projects here. We're talking about smaller indie projects. If you keep it under 150, you are likely to make some money back. Again, depending on a lot of different things. How good is the movie? How good are the actors? How good is the sound? How good is the video? And it's important. It helps if you get accepted to different film festivals. If you win, of course, that's always helpful. And if you can find a distributor, for sure, that's really, really important. I know some people, nowadays you could do it yourself, honestly. But there are certain things that you won't be able to do yourself, for sure. There are some access distributors have where it's going to be a lot harder for you to get those. But I think it is possible to make money with Christian films. Then next question is, how much money are we talking about? Are we talking about $10? Are we talking about $150,000 in profit? If you made $10, you made money, right? But somebody said, if you break even, you're in good shape.
Yeah. Well, I recently did a calculation, just one that I piecemealed together from numbers that I found online through all these different things. And I think the standard Hollywood numbers are basically like, 10% of the films will make money, 10% of the films will break even, and the rest lose money. And I think in the Christian world, it's more like 1% makes good money, about 5-6% break even, and then the rest lose money. And I feel like that's kind of, from my experience and from what I know, that seems to be around the realm of where it lands. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
I agree. I think it's a lot harder, for sure. And we need more support from our Christian communities. We do. Because Christian films have gotten so much better. Running a festival, I see it. They've gotten so much better than what it used to be. It's okay to watch Christian films. It really is. The films have gotten so much better in terms of the quality that is being put out there. Sure, there are still a lot of them that are not there yet, but forgive them. But I definitely see a major improvement overall in what is being put out there. So while we are not yet at the Hollywood level, for most of us, and we don't have the Hollywood money either, but for the money that is being put out there, I think a lot of the product is really, really good. I saw a sci-fi with special effects. I was blown away. I'm like, I had to research because it was like submitted. I had to research to see what the budget was. And I'm like, whoa, okay, not bad at all. Well,
that's great. Well, I've got time. Just two quick questions. One, what would you say is the biggest problems facing Christian filmmakers today? What would you say is the biggest problems?
Funding, lack of funding. And it's hard to get funding for Christian filmmakers, right? So if we want big and great product, we've got to support them. So there's not enough funding, I believe, to help filmmakers produce better films. So the support needs to be there from all of us. So when you're making a film and you're asking for support, I think we all should support, because that helps you produce better films. So if you have $10 versus $1,000, it makes a difference.
It does, for sure. Well, Marty, let me wrap it up with this. You have, you're in the creation game, the streaming game, the film festival game, many other things. You're one of the busiest guys in the industry. Where do you hope to be 5 years from now?
In Hawaii, sipping a margarita. I try not to go that far, only because of how God works with me. Because I've done that so many times, and God's like, and He keeps changing the course of where I had planned or where I had thought. So I take it day by day. I still plan, of course, but I let Him lead on that one, and wherever He wants to take me, I am willing to go. I stopped fighting. I stopped fighting Him.
Yeah, you better stop. He's gonna be like, Marty, I want you to go into office next, and you'll be like, oh no.
Right.
Oh my gosh, Marty, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here, and I'm just really excited to hear about what you're doing. Looking forward to seeing what happens next with all these different things. I'm super excited about ICFF, and so I want to thank you personally for what you've done. It has blessed me as a person having attended and just seeing what you've done, and so if you've blessed me in that way, I'm sure you've blessed just thousands and thousands of others. So well done. You've done great, and just please keep doing it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
This has been the Chason Laing podcast. You're going to find the relevant links from today's show in the show notes. So I'm going to put all of Marty's links there. There's a bunch of them. Please check them out. He's got a lot of great stuff going on. If you enjoyed the show, please hit the subscribe button and click the little notification bell to be alerted when the next episode drops. And if you have a question for myself or Marty, please drop it in the comments, and we will definitely get back with you. That is all for this episode, folks. Go get after it.